Hey everyone, we're going to talk about troubleshooting foamy beer on your bottoms-up system. We'll be mentioning the Kegerator setup like we've got here, or working with the long draw walk-in cooler setup. Foam is a result of temperature or pressure changes, so we're going to look at ways to diagnose from where the foam is coming and also how to reduce the foam and get things pouring correctly on your system. One of the first things I like to do is take a keg that's already pouring fine on your system and tap it on the line that's causing the issue to see if it is directly a just keg issue or if it could be something greater. I always try that first. If you can pour fine on the keg that you switched over, we know that the original keg might be overcarbonated. It might have been sitting for a long time. It has a lot of excess CO2 in the keg, all that head pressure. It could be that there's the pressure on the keg itself is too high. It could be a combination of things. So the first thing I like to do, just to eliminate anything, is so if you've got a kegerator, we want to cut off the supply to that keg. So that's going to be, we've got a red, we just kind of follow the red barb here to where we want it to go. And you can see over here, there's that red valve. There we go. That red valve is our supply to this line. You can see the red hose here. So just turn that off. So with our gas supply to this keg turned off, what we want to do is we want to pull out on this release valve here. What we're going to do is take all the head pressure off of the keg and then let it sit for a while, and then we're going to continually bleed off as it starts to release from the liquid. So when it's turned off, you just pull out on this like that, and you pull off on it for about 4 or 5 seconds until no more gas is coming out. So doing this process, what we're trying to achieve here is to kind of get things balanced back out. So the way that a keg works, if you don't know, the gas comes through our colored line there and pushes its way down to fill the keg. CO2 is heavier than air, so it's got more weight to it. It's going to force itself down. And there's a long stem in the center of the keg that pushes the liquid up through the clear tube there. So when we pull out that pressure release valve, when we've got the supply turned off, we're just bleeding out any pressure that's in that keg. As the keg empties, you get more CO2 in there, which is more gas that can be absorbed into the liquid, causing more bubbles, more carbonation. And sometimes when beer is in transit or through the distribution center, it can warm up a little bit, maybe to 50 degrees, sometimes more, depending on the temperature outside, the length of the delivery route, a number of things. And as beer warms up, CO2 comes out of solution and is released and can cause a bunch of excess head pressure. It can cause more foam as you're pouring out, a number of things. So we just want to start with this base point to get the pressure back down to 0. Then I like to let the keg set for a couple minutes. Then you come back to it and do the same thing where you just pull out on your release here. Any excess pressure, we can bleed off, and just do that a couple times to kind of get a nice starting point again. It's also a good idea to check your supply tank. It could look like this. For a lot of Kegerators, they'll use a tank mounted regulator that looks like this. We recommend it be cranked up to past 40 because there are often, in many Kegerators, a secondary regulator here that will be between 12 and 15 psi. A lot of older Kegerators, like pre 2022, 2023, they may not have that secondary regulator inside. They just have this, so this could just be between 12 and 15 psi. Please take note of that. You should have a sticker on here that will say, hey, crank this up, or keep it between 12 and 15. On here, you'll notice there's 2 dials. One has this order gas sign. This is just how much gas is in the tank, and this one here is your pressure going out of the tank into your kegerator. If you have a walk-in cooler that your kegs are stored in, and then run from there, they've got your empty keg detectors, you might have a panel that looks like this, or one that looks like this. Since we're right here, we'll start on this. So on this type of panel, this is a blended CO2 system. So it's CO2 and nitrogen going through a blender box, and it arrives at your panel here. Much like with Kegerators, red and blue go directly to your keg taps. Red is for odd numbers, blue is for even numbers, and we're gonna you can do the same thing here. So at your regulator, just close the valve, close the supply to the individual line itself, and then bleed off with the keg tap. On this type of panel, this system, this would be just a straight CO2 supply. You'll have two different kind of lines going on here, like this is for your beer pumps. That's the supply there. And then left is your keg supply. See there? So same type of deal. You just want to close the supply to our keg. You can also do that here. So you have the total keg supply valve, then the individual lines red and blue there. Do the same thing, close the supply to the keg tap, and then bleed off from your pressure release valve on your keg tap. Once you blend it off a few times, go ahead and turn your gas supply valve back on. Do a little quick test, make sure you got gas flowing in there still. And then go ahead and go into the purge function on your circuit board. You can do that by pressing small medium together, pushing down on this, and pressing that button. Press any size button. To get out of purge, press the small medium together again, or you can just simply take a glass and push down on it just to fill some up if you need to. Something that could also be a pressure or temperature issue relating to the walk-in cooler long draw type setup. Looking at empty keg detectors here, let's say you've got a new keg, you tap it, you top off the keg detector like that, floats at the top, everything's looking great. You go to do a pour, and halfway through the pour, the dispenser stops and your empty keg detector lights go off on your circuit board. What does that mean? It could be a couple things. Looking at temperature and pressure again, in the transit process, the keg could have been shook up a lot. The temperature on it could have raised up depending on the way that it was delivered. Most distribution, they're using refrigerated trucks, so things stay cold, but they may not stay super cold. I mean, warm beer, quotation marks there. It could be, in the upper 40s, low 50s. When it gets into your keg, and if you tap it right away, all of that excess carbonation and temperature rise could cause some issues. What's happening when you tap that fresh keg and you go to pour is as liquid comes up through the system, it's getting excess foam coming out the center tube here, and the excess pressure and the excess foam pushes the float down temporarily. So as that float comes down, it triggers the information system to the circuit board saying, hey, this keg is empty. Although the keg isn't empty, just the system is designed in such a way that when the keg is actually empty, that's what's happening. So the excess pressure is pushing that float down and causing that trigger to happen. As it settles out, it'll raise back up and be good to go. So the way that you can kind of troubleshoot this issue is, you could take a phone and set it up in your cooler and see what happens when you pour, have another person in the cooler checking out to see if that's the issue. And you'll see just tons of foam blow out here, or you might see just a bunch of headspace happening. And again, that has to do with as beer is warming, going up in temperature, CO2 is pushed out of the liquid, and to fill any empty space along the way. So that empty space could be in the empty keg detector itself, could be in the line. And so the solution for that really would be to let the keg set for a little while, or you can do the same process that we did earlier where you shut off the gas supply to the keg and release the pressure through the keg tap. And again, this entire process is about bleeding off excess pressure and trying to create a balance of temperature, pressure, and the way that the system is designed.